Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. 8 rounds have been played in the Norway chess tournament, and round 8 was certainly dramatic. The penultimate round, so a lot resting on this. So I'm going to take you through the game between Viswanathan Anand and Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. And then I'll look at another game briefly afterwards. Anyway, let's concentrate on this game. Anand playing with white. Now, he has had a fantastic tournament. Facing Mamedyarov, who's sort of bubbling under a little bit there. Also not playing badly. And he selects the Petrov. Well, super solid with black. You know, normally I think of Mamedyarov as being a very adventurous player, but I think this is a clear sign that he would be content with a draw. Anand doesn't risk one of the main lines. He plays bishop d3. It looks very strange to block the d-pawn. Well, in fact, it leads to quite orthodox positions. One can play with c3 and bishop c2 and then d4. Morozevich used to play like that, for example. But Vishy plays in a very solid way. Brings the bishop back to f1. It's obviously not as threatening on this square as on this diagonal. But having said that, what they've reached here is a position where effectively white has gained 2 tempi. You can see that white has these extra moves. Rook e1, bishop back to f1. Now, does it make a huge difference? I mean, essentially it's 2 extra tempi for white. The problem is it's not that significant because, first of all, pawn structure is completely symmetrical and stable. But more than that, black has very easy development. You know, there's nothing very challenging about white's setup. Rook e8 looks very sensible. So now Vishy tries to make a little something of his extra moves by unbalancing with c4, but because black is so stable and actually has very easy development, it's not really very challenging. So it looks like Vishy is content perhaps with a draw and just to go into the Armageddon afterwards. So we've got an isolated queen's pawn position, but it's very normally if you're going to get anything with white, or when you have an IQP, is you need piece activity. But here you can see black's pieces are so well developed. You know, this is not a challenging position for black. h3, well, of course, it would be lovely if black exchanged here. Then in a position like this, black hasn't got time to take here because of this. And a position like this, well, that's white's dream position. You've got the 2 bishops, you've got a nice centre, you can just bring the bishop out carefully. Nice position. But of course, Mamedyarov keeps the tension here. a3. Softly, softly. Perhaps Anand is looking to play the queen out to one of these squares, maybe the bishop. But I think, you know, if white is having to play a move like a3, it shows that there isn't too much going on here for white. You know, it's just taking too much time. Now, queen d7 is very reasonable, but Mamedyarov just exchanges pieces and plays bishop d6. And why not? Because you can see that black is very well connected on the back rank. Anand's development actually is less good. You know, this bishop needs to come into play, which it does after bishop e3. And now we can see the point of this little shuffle with bishop d6 and very nice stable square is that Mamedyarov has made room for the queen to come out to f6. So very nice development for black, and it's quite clear that white has no advantage in this position. Yes, there's a nice centre, but you can't do anything with it when black is so well developed. Bishop d3. And here it's possible just to exchange on f3. And Mamedyarov mentioned afterwards that, you know, on another day of the week he might have just done this and played knight e7. He said easy draw. And it's true, this is a solid way for black to play because there's no real issue with these queenside pawns. You know, you might play c6 maybe to block out this one. The knight is going to swing to g6 where it potentially looks at these squares. And black is super solid. The bishops don't really count for much in that position. But Mamedyarov decides just to keep a little bit more tension with h6. So covering this square. And now Vishy decided, okay, he didn't want to live with this pin, so he played g4. Attacking the bishop, breaking the pin, and the bishop comes back. And although one could say, yes, it's moving the pawn up in front of the king, I mean, this kind of advance is not unusual. White can usually get away with this when you have control of the centre. Nevertheless, you know, the queen and bishop are nicely placed and black is very comfortable here. King g2, yeah, just protecting this one so that after the exchange, then the king protects the knight. And now Mamedyarov just swings the knight round and it's looking to come to g6 and then it looks at these squares. So, yeah, quite a nice way for black to play. You can see that, you know, if anyone has slight initiative, then it's black actually in this position. So Vishy has to be a little bit careful. He played bishop d2 here, which is reasonable. You know, he sees some danger here and thinks, right, you know, let's just make sure I can challenge on the e-file. Knight g6, the knight continues its journey. And now something very strange happened. Mamedyarov got up from the board and was walking around. Anand was at the board thinking, and he played his next move, queen b5, while Mamedyarov was away from the board. And Anand played this move and thought for a few moments, and then he signed the score sheets and stopped the clocks. And when Mamedyarov came to the board, he offered his hand in resignation. And Mamedyarov, I mean, you can find the clip online. If you look at Twitter, you'll find you'll find this clip. I mean, it's fascinating because Mamedyarov is in complete shock. He's just going, why are you resigning? And then they had a little conversation and, well, clearly Anand pointed out that there is a winning move for black in this position because Mamedyarov here can play queen takes knight on f3. It's actually quite an unusual tactic. That's checkmate. Very, very simple. And of course, I mean, the king can come back, but, you know, black is just a piece up with, well, a crushing attack, basically. So after queen b5, Anand didn't even bother waiting for Mamedyarov to execute this move. He just resigned. A lot of people were saying, well, why didn't Anand wait? You know, Mamedyarov's reaction says something. You know, he didn't spot this. Well, you know, you'd sit down and you'd think for just a few seconds, and of course Mamedyarov would see this. As he said after the game, on every move, generally he looks at sacrifices. I mean, that's his style. He's not going to overlook this move. But actually, I thought that was classy from Anand, because not only did he show respect for Mamedyarov, of course he's going to see this, but he showed self-respect. You know, he doesn't want to indulge in some game of, you know, sitting there with a poker face, you know, trying to sort of convince his opponent that everything is fine. He's above that, and he just resigned straight away. So, as ever, Vichy shows his class, actually. But very unfortunate for him. Anand has played a superb tournament up to this moment, really controlling games beautifully. And yeah, just very unfortunate that he's overlooked this simple tactic. Queen takes knight. Do we draw conclusions from this? Do we say, oh, well, you know, he's getting old, you know, people miss tactics? Well, I don't think so, because, you know, you can easily flip it around and say, well, he's played a brilliant tournament, which he has. It's just one of those things. People make mistakes, even the best of them. What can you do? So, with that win... Oh, I should say that in this position, let's just fill in some details. If white plays queen f5 here, it's a slightly drastic way to stop black's threats, but actually white is fine in this endgame. You know, after this, you play f6, and well, you know, black has a very slight initiative, but you know, white should be fine there basically. So queen f5 is a safe move, and white should be fine. But yeah, queen b5 loses. So that meant that Mamedyarov bounced up, into the lead with that 3-point win. So the question was, could Carlsen actually profit from Anand's mistake? And well, let me just show you this one very, very quickly. Carlsen was playing Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. They drew their classical game. Anand had to endure a little bit of rook and bishop against rook. He was on the defending side of that. So they went into an Armageddon, which was, well, all over the place. You know, both sides had chances. Actually, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov had the better chances, but they reached this endgame. Now, this is after 53 moves. Time was ticking down. This should be a draw. So Carlsen with white. Black has these pawns moving down the board. Okay, you have a little think. How would you play with black in this position? Black is still okay here, but how? Maxime got it wrong, unfortunately. What should black play? I'll have a Slurpee, you have a little think. Now, this kind of move, you know, when you're short of time, is almost impossible to play these endgames accurately. There had already been some swings. You know, both players had made mistakes. It's normal. It's too complicated to get right when you're short of time. Here, king f5 should draw the game. And here is how. So the king basically has two options. It might come to g4, it might come to e4. So king d3, and now h2. So that stops the rook taking the pawn. And the king comes back, king e4, and this should be a draw. So for example, after, well, if white waits, f5, waits again, black can play like this. And actually there's not a lot going on in this position. Should be a draw. Just king d4 and so on. You can also play king b3, but anyway, that's roughly the idea. King f5. I think with king f5, it keeps options open. You still might go to g4 to support the h-pawn, but also you can come into e4. But after king g5, Maxime's move, this was a mistake. After king d3, it's too late, and that was that. That was game over. Game finished here. If king g4, let's just see why this loses now. Because after this, here's the key move. Rook g1 check. And if here, the king is trapped. Likewise, king here and king f3, and black will slowly lose this because, well, the rook comes here, and if the pawn advances, the king comes in. Alternatively, let me see. Let's try this one. What about h2? So So stopping this one being taken. Now the king comes back. If king g4, then here, and again the king is trapped on the h-file. And let's look at king f5. So what if the king ducks back? Here's the difference. The king comes to f3. And in this case, black's king is too slow. In fact, here, that's just winning. And check. And king e2. So there we go. Very unfortunate for Maxime. He played king g5. King f5 would still have drawn. Now, the scores going into the final round. So that meant Carlsen just snuck into the lead. So Carlsen has 15 points. Mamedyarov has 14.5. Vishy has 13 points. So, well, it's still mathematically possible for Vishy to win, but with 2 players ahead of him, it's going to be, well, he needs some luck on his side. Last round pairings. Carlsen has black against Topalov. Mamedyarov has white against Rajabov. So all to play for. It's going to be very tense. Oh, and Anand has black against Tari. Well, okay, that gives him a chance. Tari, you know, considerably weaker than other players in the tournament. So Anand still has a little bit of a chance. So I will be catching up with events. Watch out for my video rounding up what is happening in Norway chess. Thanks for watching.